We are going to install a very basic and simple solar system. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take, let me get you so you can see this. We're just going to take this single 100-watt monocrystalline panel that was under $1 a watt, which is awesome. And we're going to connect it to, let's see, where are we at here? Oh, there we go. There we go. So we have a little battery bank here that's got a solar charge controller, a little inverter, 800-watt inverter on it, and a maintainer, along with a deep cycle battery that we use just for emergency purposes. And we have small systems like this as a battery backup for us. But what I want to show you is how we install these small systems and how we do that, and then also why we do that. And we do that for many reasons. And in this case, it's going to be a couple things, and I'm going to show you that real quick. This is basically going to power a few things here on our back deck, our little back deck, our back garden. We've got our water tank down there, and that's our rainwater catchment, one of our rainwater catchment systems. And there's a small little sump pump in there, and then so we collect rainwater there, and then we're going to use this little solar system in order to pump water up here to water our deck container garden. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so let's real quick talk about what the capabilities of a small system like this really is, because you got to remember that this is it's a limited system, but it's very useful for certain things, and then other things you're just not going to be able to power with something like that. So for example, this type of a system, or any solar system, or I should say the vast majority of solar systems, you're not going to run air conditioners or heaters, anything like that. But there's a lot of things that you can run. Okay, so again, we have this 100-watt system. We've got our battery bank in there, and inside of that is the deep cycle battery. And the deep cycle battery, they're all slightly different. But this one, what I use as a rule of thumb is like, okay, well, what can it charge? What can it hold? And then what can it power? Well, that's limited by the inverter. And the inverter is an 800-watt inverter. So in other words, something that continuously runs and pulls 800 watts is the max that you can run off of this system. So it's limited by the inverter. Now the battery itself, the way I like to look at it is that I have at any given time, if there's no sun and no power, I've got 800 to 1,000 watts to play with. Okay, because I don't want to bring it all the way down. I don't want to discharge. In fact, I like to stay at about 50% discharge only. But let's just use this for an example. 800 to say 1,000 watts to play with. So what can I run? Well, we'll look at a couple things. Number one is the sump pump that is running the water that's up here, the rainwater catchment system. Little sump pump. It's like a 1/4 horsepower sump pump, and it runs on a continuous basis about 600 watts. Okay, so it takes 600 watts to run that. Right now you got to remember, you have 600 to 800 watts that you have available in that battery, right, to bring it down to keep some charge in there. Now that's for a long period of time. So continuously running on that 600 watts, well, in an hour we would use 600 watts. Okay, in 10 minutes, about what we use each day, I'm going to use 60 watts. Okay, so that's kind of how you have to measure it. You have to look at the continuous running amount so that it doesn't exceed the inverter capacity. But then how much is it going to use? Well, 10 minutes of that pump is about 60 watts. And even if we round it up and say 100 watts, because when you first start it, there is a little bit of a surge in the power that it takes to start it. And that, in fact, that can pop up to almost about 1,000 watts. Now an 800-watt inverter, can handle a quick startup of 1,000 watts, but it does not want a continuous 1,000-watt pull. Okay, so 600 watts for say 10 minutes a day, that's 60 watts. If we're going to charge a laptop, or something like that, I think that would pull about 50 watts an hour, right? So I mean, you can charge laptops quite a bit. Our phone chargers, your typical phone charger is 5 or 10 watts. Okay, 5 or 10 watt pull on it. Okay, so you could, I mean, if you were just charging laptops and phones, you could really go a long time. And then you have to keep in mind of your recharge capability, right? So we have our panel, our 100-watt panel. Okay, and it's a 100-watt panel, but that doesn't mean it's going to be pulling 100 watts. In fact, there's no solar panel that I know of that has, it's rated for a certain wattage that actually pulls, in case there's some loss there. So maybe it pulls 70 watts, in full sun. So that's happening every hour. That 70 watts is going back in. So theoretically, if we've got good sun, we would never even, our battery is never going to dip low unless we're doing things like, say, I don't know, pulling out, some other appliances that may be a bigger draw, or we need to run something for long periods of time. Okay, then we would have to start really watching it. But I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of the basic capability of this type of a system, and what your limitations are, and what kind of things that you can run, right? So you can move some water, you can charge laptops and phones, and you can even do like say coffee grinders and things like that for short periods of time. They only take a couple hundred watts anyway, but there's even some higher wattage stuff that if it's short time use, you can still do it. You just don't want to, again, exceed the capacity of the inverter, or generally speaking, heating anything or cooling anything outside of like a fan. A fan would be a good use for something like this. So there you go. There's the capabilities of a system like. So one of the first things to work out is placement of a solar system, and obviously you want to have maximize the sun exposure, and this happens to be east, and so that's the north side of our deck, which will, if we put the panel over here, it'll maximize our southern exposure. Okay, so that's the main southern exposure right there, and it'll actually maximize, and we get all the way to afternoon sun. Yes, it will be blocked a little bit here, but again, this is maximizing the sun as best we can for this area. Now, this is actually the very sunniest post right there. Okay, that gets the maximum sun. So if you want to be technical, we would put the panel right here, and that would maximize the amount of sun that it gets. However, with all things considered, and having the deck and room and view and all of that, we're going to put it right over here, which again gives us plenty of sun to keep that battery topped off for the small amount of stuff that we're going to do, which includes, just like I said, pumping a little bit of water, some other minor things, and then of course emergency backup. Okay, for this project, we're going to, like I said, we're going to mount this panel on a pole, and our pole happens to be some extra PVC that's laying around, so we don't have to buy it. And then we're going to put together this bracket. We'll mount the bracket on the pole, and then I'll show you the next step after that. Hey, I'd love to hear about what alternative energy projects you've got going on that you're either using now or that you're wanting to build. If you've got something like that in mind, go ahead and give me a comment, or if you have any recommendations to tweak this system, make it even better, I'd love to hear that too. And with that, if you're getting something out of this video, please hit like and subscribe to our channel. And if you know anybody that would benefit from this channel, go ahead and share for me. Appreciate that very much. All right, so the post is put together. This little pole mount is on there. I just bought that off of Amazon. Very inexpensive. I'm going to put a link to these items in the video notes. But it's super simple. Just hose clamps, bolts together, and nice and strong, easy and simple. And then next, what I'm going to do is hook up the panel. The only thing I had to modify was I had to drill this out to be a little bit bigger, just to fit the bolts that came with this kit, just to make it simple. Okay, so now I've got the solar panel installed on the post with just these bracket here, and okay, so this project is complete, besides a little bit of cleanup with the wiring that I've got to do. But basically, that battery bank in there is providing, let's see if I can show you this. All right, so there's our inverter right there, solar charge controller, maintainer. Obviously, when that battery gets down below a certain point, it'll start taking the charge from the panel, but it's a full battery right now. And so we have, again, the rainwater catchment tank down there with a little sump pump in it. And I've got the cord running up here, so we'll just test it. And that's the hose right there. So let's just see. We'll go fill up our wicking beds. All right, so we just turn. Okay, that's on, and it should be starting our little pump there. And there we go. We've got water, we've got rainwater, and I can use it to fill up the wicking bed. I don't need to do it right now, but that's it. So we're going to use it up here probably all summer long, and it obviously is available to us in case of any emergencies, whatever. I'll put a lid on top of there and again clean up the wiring. But a nice piece of gear, basic 100-watt panel, a small little battery bank, able to take care of a few things. And there we go.